Christmas nightmare. It was a snowy Christmas Eve in the quaint little town of Willowbrook, nestled deep in the snowy mountains of Vermont. The streets were lined with glowing lights, frosted pine trees, and a light dusting of snow that shimmered under the street lamps. Inside our cozy house, my family and I were preparing for the most magical night of the year. The fire crackled in the hearth, the smell of gingerbread filled the air, and our Christmas tree sparkled with ornaments collected over decades. My wife Emily was in the kitchen finishing up a batch of cookies, while our son, Danny, and daughter Lily were sprawled on the living room floor, shaking the wrapped gifts under the tree, trying to guess what was inside. I sipped on hot cocoa and smiled at the scene, grateful for this rare moment of peace in a chaotic world. "Don't stay up too late," I said with a chuckle as Danny tried to inch closer to the big red package in the corner. "Santa won't come if you're still awake." "But Dad," Lily piped up, "how does Santa visit all the houses in one night? And why doesn't he just use the front door like everyone else?" "Magic, sweetheart," I replied, ruffling her hair. "Santa's magic." We laughed and continued our festive rituals, oblivious to the nightmare that awaited us. The clock struck 10, and we decided it was time to send the kids to bed. Emily and I stayed up for a while longer, arranging the presents under the tree and nibbling on the cookies meant for Santa. By the time we retired to bed, the house was silent except for the faint howling of the wind outside. The visitor in red. I awoke suddenly, unsure of what had roused me. The clock on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. At first, I thought it was the wind, but then I heard it, a faint jingling of bells. My heart leaped as I wondered if it was part of the town's decorations flapping in the wind. Then came the sound of something heavy scraping across the roof. "Do you hear that?" I whispered to Emily, nudging her awake. She groaned and pulled the covers over her head. "It's probably just the wind. Go back to sleep." But I couldn't. The sound of boots crunching on snow came next, followed by the unmistakable thud of footsteps on the porch. My heart pounded as I tiptoed to the window, peeking out through the frosted glass. Standing there, bathed in the glow of the porch light, was Santa Claus. At least, it looked like Santa. He was dressed in a red suit trimmed with white fur, but his beard was scruffy, and the whites of his eyes gleamed unnaturally in the darkness. He held a large sack slung over one shoulder, and he was looking directly at our front door. I shook my head, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a neighbor in a Santa costume playing a joke, or a hired performer delivering holiday cheer. But at 3 a.m, my stomach churned uneasily. "Emily, wake up," I said, my voice shaking. "What is it?" she mumbled, sitting up groggily. "There's someone outside, dressed as Santa." She frowned and joined me at the window. Her face paled when she saw him. "Do you think we should call the police?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. A gift for the children. Against my better judgment, I decided to confront the man. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept under the bed and crept downstairs. Emily followed close behind, clutching her phone with trembling hands. When I opened the door, Santa was still there, his eerie smile stretching wide across his face. "Merry Christmas," he bellowed, his voice deep and guttural. "I brought gifts for the children." He dropped his sack onto the porch with a loud thud, the sound oddly metallic. My grip on the bat tightened as I forced a smile. Thanks, but it's late. You should probably move along." His smile faltered for a moment, and his eyes narrowed. "It's never too late for Christmas cheer," he said, his tone sharp. Then he turned and walked off into the snow without another word, disappearing into the swirling flakes. Emily and I stood frozen for a moment before looking down at the sack. It was old and tattered, and it smelled faintly of copper. Against every instinct screaming at me to leave it alone, I dragged it inside. We opened it carefully, half expecting it to be filled with junk or something worse. Inside, we found several crudely wrapped presents, each labeled with one of our children's names. A chill ran down my spine as I picked up the box labeled Danny. It was surprisingly heavy. "Let's put it away for now," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. "We can deal with it in the morning." I nodded, but something about the gifts felt wrong. Sinister. The unwrapping. At dawn, the kids bounded down the stairs, their excitement dispelling the tension from the night before. They tore into the presents under the tree, laughing and squealing with delight. I almost forgot about the mysterious sack until Danny found the gift with his name on it. "Who's this one from?" he asked, holding up the box. Santa," I said hesitantly, exchanging a glance with Emily. He ripped off the paper and opened the box. Inside was a gleaming knife, the blade etched with strange symbols. My stomach dropped as I snatched it from his hands. "This isn't a toy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But it's so cool," Danny protested. I turned to Emily, who was pale and shaking. "We need to get rid of these," I whispered. She nodded, gathering the other gifts from the sack. Lily's box contained a pair of rusted scissors, and the gift labeled for Emily held a small, cracked mirror. The reflection inside was distorted, showing her face twisted in an expression of agony. "This isn't right," she said, her voice barely audible. "Who was that man?" Santa revealed. That evening, as we tried to shake off the unease, the lights in the house flickered. Then they went out completely, plunging us into darkness. The kids screamed, and I fumbled for the flashlight in the kitchen drawer. The jingling of bells echoed through the house. "Stay here," I told Emily, handing her the flashlight. I grabbed the bat again and crept toward the living room. The jingling grew louder, accompanied by the faint sound of laughter, low, guttural, and chilling. I reached the Christmas tree and froze. Santa was standing there, his back to me. His sack lay open at his feet, and from it spilled not gifts, but tools. Knives, hammers, ropes, and other instruments of torture. He turned slowly, and his face was no longer jolly. His eyes were black pits, and his smile stretched impossibly wide, revealing jagged yellow teeth. "Merry Christmas," he rasped, lunging at me. The fight for survival. Chaos erupted as I swung the bat, narrowly missing his head. He was fast, too fast for a man his size. He grabbed the bat and wrenched it from my hands, throwing me to the ground. Emily screamed from the doorway, holding the flashlight. "Run!" she yelled to the kids. Danny and Lily bolted upstairs as Santa turned his attention to Emily. I scrambled to my feet and tackled him, knocking him off balance. He roared in fury, his voice echoing unnaturally. "Emily, call the police," I shouted as I wrestled with him. But the phone lines were dead, and our cell phones had mysteriously lost signal. Santa overpowered me, his hands like iron as he dragged me toward the sack. "You've been a naughty boy," he hissed, "and naughty boys don't get to see the morning." The end of the nightmare. Just as he was about to pull me into the sack, Danny appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching the knife Santa had gifted him. With a cry, he hurled it at the man. The blade struck true, sinking into Santa's shoulder. He howled in pain and released me. Emily grabbed one of the tools from the sack, a hammer, and swung it at his head. It connected with a sickening crunch, and he collapsed to the floor. We didn't wait to see if he was dead. We grabbed the kids and fled into the snowy night, running to our neighbor's house for help. When the police arrived, the house was empty. There was no sign of Santa, but the sack and its gruesome contents remained. Epilogue. To this day, we don't know who or what he was. The police never found any trace of him, and the town dismissed our story as a case of holiday hysteria. But every Christmas Eve, we hear the faint jingling of bells in the distance, a chilling reminder that the nightmare isn't over. And if you hear those bells too, you'd better pray you've been good.